Hello, everybody. It's Datum, and it's another day in the world. So I had to do a lot of work today. I had to recatalog a bunch of books that were in the house, so I'm not going to get to Dwarven Clans again today, but this is going to be a content day. This today, so as I was doing some work and things, I was listening to some videos, and a couple of them kind of came through my YouTube stuff, and so I'm going to talk about them. So the first video, and I don't even remember the names of these videos. I don't really know the creators that well, but I did listen to things. One of them is a leaked call for GameStop, and it sounds like one market director was talking to store owners, and it sounds like it was in Canada. And that's, I mean, it really doesn't kind of matter where it was. I think it's just United States and Canada for GameStop. I might be wrong about that, but whatever. But there were enough stores on the call to where some people asked some pretty good questions and had some concerns about how GameStop was doing business. Now, I went to business school. I have a bachelor's in business administration and entrepreneurship. And I know a little bit about business fundamentals, how most businesses are ran, and especially how corporate businesses can get themselves into a very precarious, leveraged situation. It's what happens with a lot of companies, and it's definitely without even looking at any of the material or any of the quarterly earnings reports or any of the reporting that GameStop has to do. I can tell you that that is a sinking ship, and I don't think that it's a surprise to most people. Their way of doing business is going the way of the dodo. The publishers want more direct control over their software, and in the current climate, when it comes to people that sail the high seas and you know the alternative ways that people might get some of the software, they're trying to make corporate or I'm sorry, commercial software work. You can't have commercial software if you can't make any money with it. So they got to figure out how to make money, and that's just how it is. And GameStop, the way that they do business, is kind of going away. It's not the primary market anymore. So they're struggling to stay alive right now. Now they are 100% correct. They have what's called their product. The sales of their product are inversely proportional to employment. So some people might think that GameStop is in a bad situation right now. Actually, they're probably in a short-term positive situation for the business that they do. Now, there's another side to this, and it has to do with there actually being some illness out there right now, and that's part of it. But some of this uncertainty, destabilization, we're not 100% on how it's going to go, but at least in the short term, the very short term, this is a net positive for GameStop. Now, they have to staff, and those staff are going to have concerns. And the only thing that they can do is say nothing. And that's basically what happened in this leak call. They said as little as possible. They basically said wait till tomorrow, which is what you do when you're trying to string somebody along. To make sure that they're not trying to create an exit strategy. If people that are working in these stores don't have an exit strategy, they don't have a plan B, they haven't been looking around for other job opportunities, they are in a world of hurt because if they are laid off, they're not going to have an alternative. So that's a bad situation to be in. And I'm going to sound pretty heartless when I in a lot of these points that I'm going to make, but it's really like that's the situation that you're in when you're an at-will employee that does a job where there are lots of people banging on the doors to do the job, and maybe they can't do the job. Maybe they don't actually know the skills that it takes to do the job, but they like the subject matter. So there are a lot of people. They got a lot of people knocking on their door all the time, and there's lots of people that are just looking for work out there. So they're not hurting to replace associates at GameStop. Um, when it comes to the illness, people are going to be exposed, and it's a hot exposure area. And some of that really extends into kind of the cash trades that you can do at GameStop and that kind of thing. Would not be surprised if they don't suspend cash trades until the end of this illness going around. I wouldn't be surprised at all because people would be incentivized to maybe, you know, take somebody else's property and sell it. And GameStop's really not, it doesn't have really like a pawn shop kind of setup. I think they get enough information from people that are turning stuff into where if people were stealing things that they'd be able to track it down. But um, the issue is that the law enforcement has a lot on their plate right now, potentially, especially in larger population areas, and it's not going to be top of the priority list. So there really isn't any reason for them to do cash trades because, well, they don't want to get caught up in that because that costs them a lot of money in time wasted when it comes to having to deal with stolen property. And they need to keep all the cash they can. That business needs to keep every single dollar that they can possibly hold on to. There's, in this video that I watched, they kind of threw around this, I like to call it's not even a buzzword anymore, it's a buzz term, it's not even a single word. It's people over profit. Well, I can tell you in this situation, there's not going to be much profit to be had. There's going to be a lot of overhead to be had. This company's trying to stay afloat, and they've been trying to stay afloat amid an unfavorable, what I want to call it, an unfavorable market situation for them on the supply side. Demand side, I don't know. Games are starting to become not a tradable commodity, or at least not nearly as a tradable commodity as they used to be. So the situation is really changing to where I would say GameStop makes. I wouldn't be surprised if it's more than 80% of the revenue is on pre-owned material. So they're just a pawn shop and a clearinghouse for accessories and consoles and games. But people over profit is really not like the way to think about it because people are going to get exposed. People are going to have this illness, and there isn't much we can do outside of herd immunity to help that be suppressed. You know, if you are high risk, you just need to isolate yourself. That's the only thing that you can do. If you're not high risk, you know, you have to take the same precautions that we're all taking, I would hope, when it comes to personal hygiene and distance and those kind of things. People are calling this stuff social distancing. I don't think it needs a term. It's just you want to stay farther away from people. You want to wash your hands more. You want to make sure that things get wiped down and cleaned more. You know, and, well, I will say I worked for GameStop. I only worked for a season, but I remember that cleaning supplies were definitely not the top of the list. From what I remember, the store that I worked in barely had restroom supplies for employees because they didn't have a public restroom, but they did have a restroom for employees because I believe it was required by law when I was in Kentucky where I was working. It's not a very sanitary store just because of the trades that they do in the first place. You know, you got these big bins full of, and you know, they're just cases of games, but it's like when you got people just leafing through stuff, it's not the most sanitary environment. So if you're not washing your hands after you go to a place like GameStop, you are crazy. Even during regular, you know, a regular situation. So kind of the point I'm getting to with the people over profit is they're thinking about profits more than just the next month. They're thinking of the actual life of their company, and they have to keep as many stores open as possible. They need to make as much revenue through whatever happens as possible, and that's why they are taking the stances that they are. Now, the PR side of this, there's going to be a lot of people that are not living after this whole thing. And there's nothing much we can do except for those people have to isolate themselves to the extreme. And that's really it. High risk people, isolation. That's you can't do much for the general population because the general population still has to function. The world still has to go around. So people are going to go to work. People are going to go to school. Well, most of the schools are shut down, but I don't know. I'm not 100% on what's going on with colleges and that kind of thing, but it's like people are going to pursue education, I guess, outside of that. So there's going to be some group discussions or meetings or those kind of things, and there are going to be a lot of people that just don't care. They just don't care. They're not going to worry about it. They're just going to go about their daily lives, and they don't care if people look at them weird. And that's it. And they're going to be like, "Oh, nobody's here. It's easy for me. Look, I can go right up to the express lane and get right the heck out of here. This is wonderful." So, they're talking about medical capacity and all these kind of things. We don't know where that is. Got an idea. They won't talk about it on, like the news or anything like that because statistics, like people can actually do math. I would say most people, and they'd be like, "Oh, well, this could be pretty bad." Yeah, because it could. But it also, the spreading it out isn't not a big deal, but it's like with something that can be asymptomatic, like not have any symptoms for as long as it does. I mean, it's going to be a long time before full exposure is done. I mean, if you're high risk, you need to quarantine for the rest of the year, probably. And that is just the facts. And so GameStop is not going to survive a year closed. They're not going to survive. I bet you they wouldn't survive a month closed. And when it comes to paying employees, the business just isn't high profit enough. There's no way that they're going to see and pay any employees. I can't see it. I mean, except for the corporate people, which they got their salaries, they got their living situations, and guessing they're a little bit better than the people that work in their stores. And so they're going to take advantage of that. They're going to work remote, and they're going to wait it out, just like people that are high risk. Because, well, a lot of the people that are at the corporate offices are older, so they're higher risk. So that's just what's going to happen. They're going to take precautions that they need to take so that their personal health is the way that it is. And, I would say that at a corporate level, they're still going to be concerned about their employees' well-being. They have to be, because their employees are what make them all their money. That's how these kind of businesses work. The people actually out there, they have to make more. They got to bring in more than what they have to pay them. You got overhead, and you got all these different layers of things that are going on for the businesses to just be open, for those people to just have the ability to do the work. And it's not very high margin. They don't have a whole bunch of money sitting around. I guarantee it. So they got a few options. They could sell more of the company. I'm not 100% sure on like what the leveraging is of GameStop. I don't know how much of their company they've already sold. So maybe that's not an option. So if that's not an option, then the only other thing that they have in this situation, if they were going to be down, is they would have to have forgiveness from landlords and banks and that kind of stuff. And who knows if that's going to happen? I mean, they're saying that it might, but we don't have anything really clear on what's going to happen at the government level on that. So they're just saying, look, we feel we're essential. You need to stay open. But really what they're saying is that we have to stay open or else you're not going to have a job. Like, nobody will have a job. Like, forget if they have to lay some people off. nobody will have a job. The business will become mostly online only, and they will figure out a way to do trade-ins because that is what their business is based on. Now, if there's no more trade-ins, then they just don't have a business, period. So they will exit the market because they have no demand. So, or they'll go retro. They could do that. There are retro game stores that are still open, and some of them do okay. They do okay enough to have have storefronts in kind of medium, large size cities, sometimes small cities. And usually it's not the only thing they're doing, though. Usually they're doing other gaming things or doing comics or trading cards or something like that. So I'm trying to think if I haven't really hit anything else. I mean, I think the only other really big thing is like they were talking about sanitization and stuff, and I talked about it a few minutes ago a little bit. They're not going to be able to spring out supplies to the people unless they had them, or to the stores unless they had them in the first place, which they didn't, because that's a store level situation. Like if you're a store owner, or not, I'm sorry, it's not a franchise. If you're a store manager, that's going to be part of your responsibilities to keep cleaning supplies. Now, they're not going to want to give you a lot of money for cleaning supplies, so the chances that you had a reserve of cleaning supplies are probably zero. So that puts you in a position where, yeah, is the place going to be clean? No. Is it going to be high risk? Yes. Do you need to take precautions as somebody that works there for yourself? Absolutely. Now, there's the whole mask thing and that kind of thing. Guys, don't wear masks. It's not going to help. Distance, cleaning. That's all that's going to help. If you value your own health so much, you're going to bring in your own cleaning supplies, and then you are going to ask for a reimbursement. And if they don't give that reimbursement, well, plan B. But if if you're so concerned about your health, you have to pay for it. And that's just how it is. They're not in a position to even get the stuff at the corporate level, because they would do it at the corporate level and then would go out to stores. That's how it would do if they were going to have cleaning supplies. It's not going to happen. They also, on that call, they talked about having cleaning crews come in. Do you think they're going to have like those hazmat guys, like steaming down everything? No, they're not going to do that. Can't afford to do that. They don't have the supplies to do that. They don't even have the EAPs, which is an emergency action plan, which when you're in the military, you have a lot of those. They don't have EAPs other than how to get people out if there's fire or something like that. So, this cleaning crew thing that they talked about, I mean, other than it being some corporate employees or something where they take on that collateral duty and they go do that, that would be the only thing. So the last thing that I want to talk about GameStop is, it's a personal situation. So, I worked at a GameStop. I happen to have, I don't know if you can see it very well in the light. It's very bright. Can I get it to where it's not? Yeah, there you go. Woo! That's fine. I don't live here. Yeah, I don't live at that address anymore, and I really don't care if you have, GameStop's banking information. But this is the check. It's from 2013, and so I made an oopsie, and I never cashed this check. So I've emailed and tweeted to GameStop about the situation, and I'm going to see if I can get this check reissued. I'm guessing I'm not going to get this check reissued, but if that's the case, I will make sure that it costs them much more than $200 in PR. So we'll see how that goes. Other than that, there was a second video that I was looking at a little bit today, and they were talking about investments. And the first video was that was in kind of the queue, right? It was not bad. I mean, they were talking about just, I can't remember what the term for it is, but you basically just invest about the same amount of your income as you can every month. try and set a percentage. Okay, this is something that is going to be my long-term investment outside of like 401k or something like that that you might do through if you know have a salaried position. And that was a good video. They're just talking about saving money and like just investing consistently, and you're investing for the long term, and you're not worried about short-term fluctuation. So it was a good video. The second video, though, was not so good because the guy started talking about investing in real estate. Well, he started talking about down payments, and I was like, whoa. Like, I paused the video. I was like, what is he talking about? Down payment. If you're investing in real estate, you're buying them, you're buying the building, right? No, he started talking about credit score and blah 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 and this and that, and I'm just like, wow. I want to know what bank this guy works for because, yeah, not good situation. From I looked at an article. Zillow did some analytics and stuff. The estimate is about 67% of homes are owned by banks. Like, some people want to say, oh, well, they're mortgaged or whatever. No. The bank owns them. If they own the deed, if they have the deed and they legally possess the deed, they own that house. You are renting it from them until you get to the day where that deed is actually in your possession. So to tell somebody that a real estate investment has to do with a mortgage, that is so ugly that I don't even want to like think about it mostly. Now, if your portfolio is big enough to cover that diversified investment to where it's a small hitch in your investment. So you're still playing a very dangerous game if you are thinking about putting, like, I don't know, 25-30% down on a house that you're using as a real estate investment. Because there's a lot to real estate. It's not like just, okay, I'm buying a stock, it's in my portfolio, business is doing its thing. I look at quarterly earnings and make sure that the company's not going to collapse, and then, that's your fiduciary responsibility as somebody that owns stock. With property, there's a lot more, and you get into every level of government. You have to know about what you're supposed to do, what it's supposed to be. You got to know about when you go in to buy a place, like, you need to know about the codes, and you need to know, you need to know everything about the locality's rules and regulations. You need to know what the rental market's like in that area. You need to know, if you're looking to fill that with a renter, you're gonna have to figure all that out. And it's like, if you are the property owner, you're going to have responsibilities on maintenance and, all kinds of stuff. And it's like, it's just like anything with a house. You've got what it costs for the mortgage, but you also have the holding cost, which is all the maintenance that you would have to do. So, and the bank doesn't care about any of that stuff. They just care that you make your payment, because you're renting that house from them until you get that deed. And some people will say that with a real estate investment, you have equity, right? You have equity in the property. You've got so much of the percentage of the property that you have actually paid off after the interest, and that is your equity in the property. Well, if you don't finish paying for that property, you have no equity. You have zero equity. So if you somehow default, all that equity goes back to the bank. And from what I understand and what I've learned more about some of the long-term banking practices, not just on real estate, but on businesses in general, when it has to do with like mortgage property and that kind of thing, there are times in the market where one bank won't lend to any restaurant to refinance. Like, one won't, and then they all won't. And it's like, they might be working from the same data. I'm not sure if it's as nefarious as some of the folks that I know that are entrepreneurs themselves may think, but it could be. It could be that just every 15 years they just decide that they're not going to loan or refinance any restaurants, and they're just gonna pick them all up. They're just gonna take all those businesses, and those businesses are gonna have to liquidate, and they're not going to be able to stay afloat, and they are going to help step them through that process, and they're going to get as much money as they can, and they get the property back. So anything with commercial property, whether it's a business or whether it's commercial rentals, it's such a huge game that going into real estate as part of your portfolio, it has to be a huge decision. So it's really scary. Like, I can't even understand why the guy would talk about it like it's just another investment. Like, if you don't know about any of those things, because it's like you can have a general contractor and a property manager and like a real estate agent. Like, those are the three people that are working or would need to work with that property to make any turnover and cash flow to actually have a tenant in there. If you don't have any of those skills and you don't want to buy a job, it's kind of like a franchise business going into real estate. It's like, but you don't have any method. If you don't know what you're doing, then nobody cares. You still have to make your mortgage payment on that property. They don't care. You would have to have a huge portfolio already to be able to cover that. And really what you're doing is you're trading debt for cash flow. And what are you going to use the cash for? Are you using it to live? Why would you do that? Why would you put something, all of what you haven't paid for that house is on your liability side when it comes to if you were doing an accounting balance sheet. Why would you want to put yourself in a position that's a negative net worth kind of situation until you pay the house off? Well, how long is it going to take to pay the house off? Well, depends. It depends on the loan you get or whatever in that situation. But it's like you're on the hook the whole time. Basically, you would have to take out your much more stable investments out of other things to pay off something in a crisis if something were to happen to that property. And then you're going to have insurance on that property. So the insurance is actually, that's a net out too. Insurance companies it's kind of like with banks, right? They're not going to lend to you at the prime rate. Why would they lend to you at the prime rate? They don't make any money. So why would somebody give you insurance where they're just giving you insurance at the rate that would be a coverage rate to where they would be able to pay for policies that actually get called? These are there's so many layers to the real estate part of this. It's just amazing that it just gets thrown around just like any other part of a investment portfolio. It's not a safe investment. Really, it's like really the best advice is well, you don't want to have any debt before you start investing, and that's the truth. You need to have a 6-month nest egg, and the more expenses that you have month to month, the bigger that nest egg has to be. So you get a 6-month nest egg, and then you can start to look at how much of your income you can solidly put away as long-term investment. And you want it to be, ideally, 15 to 20% of what you make. And that's a lot of money. But really, it's just, that's your future. It's the future you wanting to not live on cat food and not be dependent on one, like Social Security or one cash flow. So some people will be like, well, there's no way I could ever get to that point. Well, you got to. I mean, if you want to be in a financial situation where you can not have to cut your hair and be stable enough to where you can do entrepreneurial things and things in art and all these cool things. I mean, you have to have that kind of stability. You have to have that level of stability. If you don't, you have to figure out how to get there. Or if things that are happening right now happen, you're going to be on the losing end of this arrangement. I mean, there may be some government protections and things that come out, but man, I don't know. Anybody that's dealt with government or law enforcement or anything like that, a lot of these things are messy. A lot of people fall through the cracks, and the chances that you're going to be spared from that are low. So why not have to deal with that situation in the first place? This is a lifelong. This is like a lifestyle thing. You actually have to tailor your lifestyle around some kind of level of financial freedom. In an environment where people my age, like I'm in my mid 30s, people in my age are going to have like 13 jobs during their life or something. That was like the estimates. So you're going to move jobs every 3 years ish in your career. That's crazy. It's insane. I mean, you might as well, have a have a camel and a tent because you're living a nomadic lifestyle. You don't have to do that. But if you made a lot of situations that put you in a position where you have to live in a place that you don't own, you have to drive something that you don't own, just to go to a place to pay for these things, just to kind of go through and get by, well, that's not a good situation for anybody. If you're in that situation, I don't know what to tell you. It's too late. This is not going to be a very fun couple of months, at least for you. We're going to be just fine as a nation, but individuals, there's going to be some people living under bridges. There's going to be some people that have no help. Because when everybody needs help at once, everybody's going to be in the breadline together. But there's plenty of us out in the world, different places in the country, that aren't in that situation. We're going to keep on keeping on. The economy's going to keep on keeping on. And you're just going to have to jump back in the saddle when you can. There's going to be 14 people living in a one-bedroom apartment just so that they can, have somewhere to rest their head at night and have a safe place to put what they own, which isn't going to be much. And then, have some level of transportation to try and, eke out whatever they can until they can get back on their feet. And that's a good thing about America. You can do that. You can't do it everywhere. There's got to be a lot of churn. And, just be safe out there. At this point, I know people are going to be like, well, who is this guy? And what kind of position is he in to be telling me about what's going to happen and, how some of our lives are going to suck and some of them are just going to go on like nothing happened. Well, I went into the military right out of high school. I got my education after that. Took a few extra years in between to do that, but took less time in school. So I think it took me about 5 years to get a 4-year degree, going to school for about 3 years of time. And I did that through the post 9/11 GI Bill. I got a business entrepreneurship degree. Had nothing. Why would I do that? Well, I wanted to understand business people. I didn't get it. Didn't understand it at all. How does it work? It's like, well, I'm starting to understand how it works. the there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff in banking that make things the way that they are. The way that fractional banking works, I mean, I think people really don't understand how the Federal Reserve works, and it's not one of those Illuminati, like the Rothschilds own the Federal Reserve and stuff. That's not how it works. The government has to raise money just like everybody else, but we've had things like quantitative easing in place where basically people have guaranteed to buy bonds from the government, and that is the situation that they're in because these are usually companies and individuals that are in a situation where the stability of the country is worthwhile for them to have those low yield bonds. So they issue bonds, they can issue more money to the banks, and then banks can use fractional banking to be able to put more money out in the economy through the loans and things, and 90% of that money is comes out of thin air, and when it gets paid back, that's when it's real. So some of these defaults and things, 90% of this is not actually in the economy, was not actually created in the economy as actual dollars. So, um, you know, if the banks have to take it on the chin, that's what they're there for. It's basically it's partly kind of an insurance policy for the economy of the country. But you have to do things right. Like companies that are still out there, like GM and people that did take bailouts and those kind of stuff, they have to pay them back, and they get the guys in suits and black SUVs treatment if they don't pay back. So the government does not mess around with these companies, and they will get paid back. So yes, it's a shame that we have to use the budget that way sometimes, but that's just how the ball rolls, and it's much better than a completely libertarian situation where the market just does what it does. There's no there's there you don't want to live in that world, and stability is part of what the government gives, and that's why I'm pretty libertarian, but I understand that you have to have a central government if you want to have enough stability to have the advantages of long-term planning for businesses and people. That's kind of what we're paying for. It's part of what we're paying for. It's national defense. What do you call it? A standard currency, stability. That's what we're paying for. That's why we pay taxes. And it's not the best system, but it's the best system that we figured out. So, uh, you know, I don't know. I don't know if there ever will be a better way of doing it. When it comes to how people collect and that kind of thing. And just speaking of volatility real quick, one of the reasons that you want to pay off your own debt before you do any investment is because it's the lowest volatility that you could find. The volatility is 0% on most debts because it's just you owed this and you owed this much in interest. So that is zero volatility. You know what it's going to be tomorrow. You know it's going to be in 10 years, unless something really changes or you have something like an adjustable rate mortgage or something like that, which is something you should never, ever, 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 ever do. If somebody talks about an ARM in when you're going to get a house, they're not talking about this. They're talking about an adjustable rate mortgage, and you don't want to be a part of that. The only way that you would ever want to be a part of that is if you were in a economy like the 1970s or something like that, where inflation was like 10, 11%. But if that's the case, they're not going to be offering ARMs. They're going to be offering fixed rate mortgages. So don't do that. Those are the kind of the two things that I wanted to talk about. It had to do with the business situation, especially for GameStop and investments, and how they're kind of being portrayed in some of the things that I was watching. So this has been a pretty long talk. Be sure to subscribe, like the video, comment. I'd like to know what you think about these two topics. And this has been Daily Datum. I will see you tomorrow.